Gemini, you left marks that will never be forgotten in this person's life. Gemini, you were never meant to leave quietly. There's someone out there still haunted by the echoes of your words. Words that may have sounded casual, playful, or even impulsive, but cut deeper than you realized. They pretend they've forgotten, but late at night, your voice still plays on repeat in their mind. You left a mark, not on their skin, but in their psyche. And now, the universe is stirring. It wants you to remember too. Something strange has been happening lately, hasn't it? That flicker of a name you haven't thought about in months. A dream that felt too vivid. A déjà vu that rattled you a little more than it should have. This isn't coincidence. This is Mercury, your ruling planet, trying to get a message through. And you, Gemini, master of duality, messenger of the cosmos, are being called to pay attention. This is Esoteric Wisdom, and I'm Elizabeth, your guide, your mirror, your fellow traveler through the mysteries that live between the stars and the psyche. If what I just said sparked something inside you, stay with me until the end. You're about to discover the truth behind a connection that never truly ended. And if you feel seen, let yourself be heard. Like, comment, or subscribe to stay connected. Because this story isn't over. Are you ready to find out what they've never said, but never stopped feeling? Chapter 1. The words you never meant to weaponize. You speak in riddles, Gemini, not because you want to confuse, but because your mind moves faster than most can follow. But what happens when the words you toss like feathers land like daggers in someone else's soul? There's a moment, brief, electric, maybe even forgotten by you, where you said something that cracked someone wide open. Maybe it was a joke. A truth wrapped in sarcasm. A sharp goodbye said too quickly. But for them, it wasn't forgettable. It was unforgettable. Because you were unforgettable. That's the thing about your Mercury-ruled mind. You process, adapt, and move forward. You don't cling to the past, you dissect it. But the people who cross your path, they don't always recover as fast. They stay stuck in your orbit long after you've already shifted constellations. Psychologically, Gemini, you represent duality, but also unpredictability. You connect deeply, then vanish. Not out of cruelty, but because you're driven by curiosity, evolution, and the constant hunger for what's next. What you may not realize is that this rhythm, this coming close and pulling away, creates a fracture in others. They remember you not just for what you said, but for how quickly it ended. For how you disappeared like a storm that didn't wait for the calm. Mercury doesn't just rule communication. It governs impact. Mental imprints. Neural echoes. You don't just talk, you leave mental graffiti. And someone, somewhere, is still staring at your last sentence like it was written in permanent ink on the inside of their chest. Do you know who I'm talking about? They do. And now, so do you. Think back to the last time you felt someone freeze when you walked into the room. The awkward silence. The look that lasted too long. The message they never replied to. That was the moment your words came back to haunt them. Or maybe to haunt you. You didn't mean to leave a mark, but you did. Gemini, you're air, but your touch carries thunder. You're not cruel, but you are unforgettable. And this person, whoever they are, is still holding on to what you left behind. The universe is shifting. The retrograde patterns of Mercury, the planet you call home, are surfacing what was buried. Miscommunications. Unfinished conversations. Lingering energy. You're being asked to look again. To listen more deeply. To take responsibility not just for what you said, but for what it meant. Because you didn't just speak. You activated a wound. You sparked a question that still hasn't been answered. You turned a moment into a lifetime of wondering. This chapter is not about guilt. It's about awareness. About realizing that even in your lightness, there is weight. That in your speed, there is consequence. And that someone is still walking around carrying a version of you they never got to reconcile. Are you ready to remember what you forgot? Because Gemini, they never did. Chapter 2. When Mercury turns the mirror. You always thought you were the observer, Gemini. The one who sees, who analyzes, who reads between the lines. But now Mercury, the planet that governs your thoughts, words, and mental instincts, is no longer just handing you information. It's holding up a mirror. And what you see in it might surprise you. This isn't just another retrograde. This is personal. Recently, things have felt off. Maybe you've been forgetting names, misreading messages, bumping into emotional shadows you thought you'd already outgrown. That's Mercury whispering in your ear. You missed something. Something subtle. Something critical. And it's tied to a connection you brushed past too quickly. Because for you, Gemini, everything is fast. Thoughts race. Decisions come and go like winds changing direction. But Mercury's mirror isn't about speed. It's about reflection. It's about asking you to slow down enough to see the damage done by words left hanging. Or worse, words spoken in moments of frustration, fear, or ego. There was a time, maybe weeks ago, maybe years, when you looked someone in the eye and thought, they get me. And for a brief moment they did. Until the rhythm changed. Until you changed. Because that's the truth of your nature. You're always evolving. Always adapting. But not everyone can keep up. And not everyone wants to. Some people just want you to stay. And you couldn't. You didn't. You moved on, maybe silently. Maybe chaotically. Maybe without warning. But Mercury remembers. And more importantly, so do they. In therapy, we call this emotional residue. It's the imprint left behind when someone exits without closure. Gemini, you're not heartless. But your need to stay mentally stimulated often overrides your emotional presence. You don't mean to ghost. You mean to escape. Escape the boredom. Escape the emotional intensity. Escape the feeling that staying still might mean being stuck. But what if this time, you're the one haunted by a face you didn't mean to forget? There are signs now. Subtle but unmistakable. An old playlist that suddenly hits different. A sentence you overheard that echoes a conversation you swore you buried. A dream that jolts you awake at 3 a.m. That's Mercury digging. Rewinding the reel. Not to punish you, but to show you that your words mattered more than you thought. Gemini, you're a master of stories. But some stories don't end when you stop telling them. They keep unfolding in the other person's heart, in the subconscious, in the quiet places where meaning outlives memory. And this one, it's still being written. Right now, the cosmic energy is asking you to revisit. Not to rekindle necessarily, but to understand. To acknowledge the version of yourself you left in someone else's reality. To ask the question, what part of me did they fall in love with? And what part did I abandon? This isn't about regret. It's about responsibility. It's about realizing that even the messengers have messages they don't want to hear. And Mercury? He's relentless. He won't let you look away. Not this time. So pause. Think. Who did you leave mid-sentence? Because they're still listening for the ending. Chapter 3. The Ghost in Their Silence. Gemini, you thrive on words. They're your oxygen, your playground, your shield. But what happens when someone stops speaking and their silence starts speaking louder than anything they've ever said? You may not have noticed it at first. That shift in tone. That delayed reply. That one conversation where they didn't match your pace anymore. At the time, you probably brushed it off. Life moves fast. You were already halfway into another idea, another connection, another chapter. But now, something's circling back. Someone's absence has started to feel heavier than their presence ever did. And you're wondering, did I miss something important? You did. Because silence, Gemini, is not just absence. It's communication in its rawest, most punishing form. And the person you left behind, whether intentionally or not, has been speaking through their silence ever since. This isn't about blame. You didn't abandon them maliciously. You left in the only way you know how, by fading out when the energy no longer fed you. But here's the truth Mercury wants you to sit with. Just because you moved on doesn't mean they did. Psychologically, we know Gemini energy is wired for stimulation, not stillness. You chase the spark, the newness, the idea that maybe the next connection will be even more electrifying. But the people who fall for you, truly fall, don't just fall for your words. They fall for the way you see them. The way you mirror their thoughts back with a kind of precision that makes them feel known, maybe for the first time. And when that mirror disappears, they're left questioning if it was ever real. That's the ghost in their silence. The unanswered question. The moment they replay in their mind late at night, trying to decode the shift in your tone, the hidden meaning in your last message, the reason why you never said goodbye. You didn't mean to become a mystery. But Gemini, you are one. And now, the energy you left behind is reaching for you. Have you noticed the emotional glitches lately? A sudden mood drop. A wave of unexplained nostalgia. Feeling like you forgot something crucial, but can't name what. That's the karmic echo of a connection you left unresolved. A soul chord still vibrating. They're quiet, yes, but that doesn't mean they've let go. In fact, they may be holding on tighter than ever. Just silently. Mercury, your cosmic amplifier, is pushing this to the surface now because healing can't happen in denial. And Gemini, even you can't logic your way out of this. You have to feel it. You have to acknowledge that your words were real, your presence was intimate, and your disappearance was loud. So, ask yourself, who went quiet after you did? Who still lingers in the pauses of your conversations? Whose name comes up in your dreams when Mercury goes retrograde? Gemini, you may think you've outrun this. But some marks don't fade with distance. Some energy binds don't unravel until you return. Not physically, but energetically, to say what was never said. Even if it's just in your heart. This chapter isn't about reopening old wounds. It's about recognizing which ones were never properly closed. And the person who's been silent? They've been waiting for this reckoning. Chapter 4. The connection that never logged out. You thought it was over, Gemini. You exited the chat, closed the tab, moved on. But somewhere in the background, like an app still running, you and this person have never truly disconnected. The line between you was never severed. It just went quiet. Here's what no one tells you about Mercury's influence on you. While you move through life collecting moments, conversations, and stories like air, some of them lodge themselves deeper than you realize. They linger in your mental archives, half-closed windows in your subconscious, waiting for the right trigger to reopen. And lately, the universe has been hitting those keys. A voice you thought you forgot suddenly echoes in your memory. A message you almost sent but didn't. A name that shows up 3 times in 1 week. That's not random. That's Mercury stirring the signal again. That's the connection logging back in, subtly, invisibly, unmistakably. Let's get honest. Gemini, you're a communicator, but you also compartmentalize like a pro. When a connection threatens your sense of movement or independence, your reflex is to split. Not to hurt, but to survive. To keep your freedom intact. But sometimes, you sever the signal before the real download is complete. And that person? They felt it. They didn't get the closure they craved because the exit was too fast, too clean, too confusing. They were left staring at a digital ghost. Your words, your jokes, your energy. All archived in their memory but unavailable in real time. So they did what most do. They went silent. But silence doesn't mean peace. It means processing. They've been trying to rewrite the script without you, and it's not working. Because their nervous system still remembers you. Their emotional body still registers your frequency. The intimacy, the laughter, the sudden depth beneath your humor. It wasn't surface level. You made them feel seen in 4K resolution. And now? They can't look at anyone else the same way. This isn't about romanticizing the past. It's about energetic residue. When Mercury leaves a fingerprint, it's cosmic, not casual. You're being shown the places where your soul touched another, even if your ego forgot. And Gemini, this isn't just about them. This is about you, too. Be honest. Have you truly logged out of that connection? Or are you still checking for their updates in quiet, shame-laced ways, scrolling their profile, hovering over an old thread, feeling a tug every time someone mentions their name? Mercury doesn't care about pretense. It cares about truth. And the truth is, the connection you thought you ended still lives in you. Not as regret. Not as guilt. But as unfinished data. Gemini, this is your moment. Not to return to the past, but to acknowledge it fully, emotionally, energetically. Because until you do, that lingering tab will keep draining your psychic battery. So what now? You don't have to reach out. Not unless it's aligned. But you do need to integrate. Reclaim the version of you that existed in that connection. Thank them. silently or aloud, for the mirror they gave you, for showing you how deeply you can affect someone, for proving that even your lightest touch leaves an afterglow. This connection didn't just change them. It changed you, even if you didn't notice at the time. And now, it's time to notice. Chapter 5. Integration, becoming the story you left behind. Gemini, you're a storyteller by birth. You weave meaning from chaos, comedy from pain, clarity from confusion. But what happens when you become the unfinished story? When you are the chapter someone keeps rereading, hoping for one more line. This is the moment where everything you've read so far isn't just about them. It's about you. The mirror, the echo, the evolution. The person you left a mark on? They were more than just a passing character in your life. They were a reflection of your depth, your shadow, your light, of who you were when you let yourself be seen. And that's the part you've been avoiding. Not the breakup, not the conversation, the truth. That underneath your adaptability and your need for novelty, you crave resonance. Not just stimulation, not just fun, resonance. The kind of frequency that makes your brain and your heart feel alive. And that person, you felt it with them. And it scared the hell out of you. So you did what Geminis do best. You detached, intellectualized, framed it as a phase, a mismatch, bad timing. But Mercury, your planetary ruler, doesn't care about your rationalizations. Mercury deals in codes, in contracts. And you, Gemini, signed an invisible agreement the moment your energy fused with theirs. That agreement? To return one day. Not necessarily to the person, but to the version of yourself that showed up in their presence. Because they didn't just fall for your charm. They fell for the clarity you brought. The way you peeled back their emotional layers. The way you saw through the persona into the person. You gave them something holy, Gemini. Now the question is, will you give it to yourself? This chapter is about integration. About no longer treating your past connections as things to outrun, but as pieces of your puzzle. Yes, you're a dual sign. But that doesn't mean you have to live in split realities. You are allowed to unify, to become whole, to stop performing detachment, and actually process. Take a moment. Breathe. Who were you when you were with them? Not just the words you spoke, but the energy you carried, the softness you offered, the insight you gave without effort, the vulnerability you accidentally revealed in the middle of a joke. That version of you is still alive. And now it's asking to come home. This isn't about rekindling the connection. It's about honoring the transformation it sparked. Because the truth is, the most unforgettable mark you left was on yourself. And now, Mercury is offering you a choice. Keep running, or return to integrate. To take every fragmented piece of the connection, the silence, the words unspoken, and make meaning. Not by going back, but by going deeper. You are not just the sign of the twins. You are the alchemist of contrast, the bridge between past and future. And this story, the one you thought you left behind, is not asking for a sequel. It's asking for completion. Conclusion. The unfinished becomes power. Gemini, you began the story believing you had moved on, that your words were fleeting, that your presence passed like wind. But now you know better. You didn't just leave an impression. You left a mark. Not just in their life, but in your own. And that's the revelation Mercury has been leading you toward. It was never just about what you said or didn't say. It was about the energy you carried. The version of you that showed up in full color and then vanished into grayscale. That version, the one who felt deeply, who connected fully, who scared themselves with how much they mattered, is returning. This isn't nostalgia. This is integration. The mark you left in someone's life is proof of your capacity, your depth, Gemini. And that depth no longer has to frighten you. You are allowed to be both free and emotionally rooted. You are allowed to speak and mean it, to touch and stay, to connect and not disappear. What the universe is offering you now is a sacred portal to move from fragmentation to wholeness, from echoes to clarity, from emotional avoidance to spiritual authorship. So here's what I want you to remember. You were not a mistake. Your impact was real, and your evolution has just begun. You are not just the voice in someone else's head. You are the storyteller of your own becoming. If this message found you in a moment of questioning, stay. If it stirred memories you thought were buried, listen. And if it awakened a part of you that's been silent for too long, speak. I'm Elizabeth, and this is Esoteric Wisdom. If this truth found resonance, let yourself be heard. Like, comment, or subscribe. You never know who needs to hear your mark, your voice, your reflection. And I'll leave you with one final question. Are you ready to reclaim the version of you that someone still dreams about?